What's up, YouTube world? My name is Sydney, and today I'll be telling you all why Scarlet is my favorite book in the Lunar Chronicles series. So, as many of you probably know, the Lunar Chronicles is a series written by Marissa Meyer, and it is a science fiction slash fantasy slash dystopian futuristic type series that takes place about, I would say, 4 to 5 centuries in the future. So, be forewarned that this review will contain spoilers, so if you have not read Scarlet, and also if you have not read the other books in the series, Winter, Cress, and Cinder, because I'll probably mention things from them, please do not watch this video. So, that is your spoiler warning. So the first reason why Scarlet is my favorite book is just Scarlet, the character herself. I mean, where do I start? She is just so awesome. She's fiery and fierce and just a brilliant character, honestly, and somebody I'd love to know in real life. So when we're first introduced to her, she is very angry because she's just found out that the police have given out their investigation into her grandmother's disappearance, and so she takes her frustrations out on some poor, unfortunate tomatoes and throws them against a brick wall. So that's kind of our first introduction to her, and like her fury and her temper and her like frustration just like builds from there. But I really enjoy reading it because oftentimes in books, you know, female characters are a lot of times stereotyped as being like very demure and contained and like not showing their anger, and she like just does all the time. She shows her fury and is not afraid to do it. And honestly, like, I would love to just like throw a pumpkin or a tomato or some piece of fruit like at a wall when I'm mad. I think it would be very cathartic. So I really like that that's how she got rid of her frustrations. Something else I loved about Scarlet is that she's very, like, she always draws her own conclusions. She doesn't allow others to influence her opinions on people, and she always tries her best to not judge others until she knows them for themselves. So, for example, in, I believe it's the first chapter of the book, when she's in the tavern, and the video comes on of Cinder at the ball, and, you know, all the tavern patrons are, like, making fun of her, and mocking her, and saying how, you know, it's great that she'll be executed, and all the really rude things. And Scarlet jumps onto the bar and yanks out the cable that goes to the net screen to cut off the video. And she yells to people about, you know, like, she's a 16-year-old girl, and no matter what she did or didn't do, like, you shouldn't all jump to the conclusion that just because she's lunar means she's evil. And so, of course, you know, later on in the book, we find out that Scarlet learned from her grandmother, you know, to be very open-minded, and so, you know, to not judge others based on where they came from or based on what other people tell you. So I really enjoy the fact that Scarlet always tries her best to draw her own conclusions, and doesn't just, like, follow the herd mentality of, like, what people think. And I feel like nowadays, you know, in our current climate of social injustices, we really could use more people like Scarlet, who are not afraid to stand up to the group when the group is holding a stereotype or a negative belief about someone just based on where they're from. So I love that about her. I could ramble on and on about Scarlet as a character, and I may make a video about her separately, because there's plenty more to say. So if you would like me to make a video about her separately, let me know, because I can do that. But for now, let's move on to reason number 2. Reason number 2 is just the fact that the pacing of this book was very, like, smooth, and there was a lot of points of view. It went back and forth between Cinder and Scarlet and Kai, and we even got a small glimpse of Levana's point of view, which I really enjoyed because I think it gave us a nice first-hand, you know, account into her character. But it always was just paced very well, so I really liked that. And even there were times where she would change the chapter, and usually she would say at the beginning of the chapter, you know, who the chapter was from, just by nature of, like, using the person's name in the dialogue. But even if she didn't, like, I always knew who it was just by virtue of the point of view. So it really was nice. I feel like the characters were well developed enough to easily distinguish between them, and therefore always know whose point of view it was. and she did a good job of, like, leaving certain chapters at cliffhangers, at key moments, and then bouncing to another character and leaving them at a cliffhanger point. So, like, a lot of times in books when there's multiple points of view, I care about one person more than another, or I don't find myself as invested as learning what's happening to them, like all the characters. But in Scarlet's book, I really, like, there was not one time where there was a character who I didn't care about or didn't want to jump back to their perspective because they were on a cliffhanger. So I really think the pacing in terms of the point of view, and also just in terms of, like, there were areas where there were lots of action, like, you know, Cinder was running from the Commonwealth law enforcement, or they were escaping through the Rampion, or, you know, Scarlet and Wolf were jumping off the train. So there were plenty of high action moments, but there were also plenty of times where, for instance, Scarlet was reflecting upon her past memories and about secrets she learned from her grandmother, and, you know, what that means for her that she found out she was part lunar. And Cinder, you know, had plenty of moments where she was just thinking about, like, you know, everything that happened, and how her life changed, you know, so drastically in the past couple weeks, and what it meant that she was Princess Celine, and whether or not she wanted to, you know, whether or not she wanted to take up the mantle of princess and try to fight Lavanna, and, you know, whether she wanted to try to overthrow her and be queen, and what that would mean for her. So what I'm trying to say is that I think that Marissa Meyer did a great job of balancing those, like, slower action moments but deep psychological reflection with the characters with the fast, rapid action, like, high plot points. And I know, as someone who really enjoys writing myself, that it's really hard to get a balance between, like, fast-moving plot that's engaging and also, like, deep character reflection that's engaging. So I think she did a great job, and that's my second reason. And also, this isn't my third, but it kind of flows into it well, just that I really enjoyed Cinder's development as a character. She, you know, has a lot to do with in this book. Like, she's a fugitive, and, you know, Kai's, like, the one kind of spearheading the hunt for her. Well, not spearheading, but, you know, it's Kai's country who is hunting her, so, you know, she has to deal with that, and she thinks he, you know, hates her because she's lunar and cyborg, and just she's getting used to her new gift, and, you know, whether she thinks it's a gift or a curse, and for a while she, you know, really didn't want to use it because she felt that using it would turn her into Lavanna, but then, you know, she got into situations where, first of all, there were situations where she would just use it, like, instinctively, without even meaning to, like when she first met Thorn. And then there were times where, when they were at the farmhouse, and she was looking to find answers about her past, when they ran into Emily, she chose deliberately. She was like, you know what, like, I don't think this is a good thing to do. I think it's wrong, but I'm going to do it anyway, because I think it's the best situation possible, given the circumstance that we're in, and she used her power to trick Emily into, you know, believing that they were all, like, best friends. So really, she did a deep dive into her own character there. Marissa Meyer did a deep dive into Cinder's character and into what she was and wasn't willing to do for her own survival and well-being. And Cinder kind of had to cut some corners and cross some lines. And so I think it really made her grow up a lot more, just by, like, having to think about, you know, I'm taking other people's wills and bending them into my own, and how far I'm willing to go with that. So I really enjoyed just, like, deep dive into her character, and it brought up some of her flaws as far as what she wasn't willing to do in that regard, you know, putting herself for other people in the regard of taking away their kind of own, you know, their own will and their own thoughts. And I really enjoyed the ending of the book and how she came to the conclusion that, you know what, like, I have this gift, and I do want to overthrow Lavanna because I want to save Kai, I want to save the Commonwealth, and, like, I'm the one who chooses what I do with it, and I'm going to be the least like Lavanna I can, but I'm also going to use this power to, you know, learn how to use it to overthrow her. So I really enjoyed that. And last, but certainly not least, how could I mention why I love the book so much without including Thorn? Thorn is just, like, I love Thorn. Who wouldn't love Thorn? Like, he's a lovable thief, you know? Granted, he's a convict and a con artist and a thief and very selfish, but I just really love his character. He just says the funniest things, and it's just really endearing. I find how, like, he doesn't really want to have to put, you know, Cinder or anyone else before his own, like, thieving interests, but there are definitely times when he does that. Like, for instance, he could have, led her in circles about the spaceship and taken it without her. Or he could have, there are definitely times where, like, they could have split up, and gone their separate ways, because he would have been in less danger without her there. I mean, not that he knew that, because she didn't tell him, who she was. She didn't tell him she was Princess Celine until later on, so he didn't quite know the extent of the danger. But, I mean, there were times, like, where they were each fighting to get away from their captors, that he could have turned her in for the cast money reward, a bunch of things. So I like that he kind of, like, ended up putting their teamwork before his own. That being said, he also thought that they were hunting Princess Celine and that they would get a bigger reward for her. So maybe it doesn't say that much about his character traits, but I just love him. He's funny. He flirts with everybody. Like, he's just so endearing. It's the kind of thing where, like, if you haven't read the book, you shouldn't be watching the video because I told you we have spoilers. But it's really hard to just explain about the character. You kind of have to read it to know why he's so great. But I just love being introduced to him, and I could go into a whole big thing about his character as it changes throughout the next 2 books. Like, I love how in Cress, Marissa Meyer did a really great job about when Thorin lost his sight and how he was able to learn how to compensate for that. And I'm visually impaired, and it always drives me crazy when I find a book and it's like, oh, the person either, like, overcame their blindness, so it's not a barrier anymore, or, like, it's so, impossible to overcome, and they are, like, bound by it and they can do nothing. So I really think she did an accurate job of showing how it's in between. There are challenges that can be overcome, and there's certain obstacles that are always going to be obstacles, but you could find ways around them. So I really enjoyed that, but I'm going to save more deep dive into that for another video when I read Cress over again. Also, I loved Scarlet's book so much that I read it twice. Once on audio, which I do most of my reading on, and then once again. And something else I love about the series and Marissa Meyer as a whole is that almost all of her books are in large print, and I can tell you that finding young adult books in large print, especially fantasy books, is like a novelty. Never happens. So I really appreciate the fact that she must have taken the time to tell the publisher to do that, because I know from experience that publishers don't just do it randomly, so she must have made a point of doing that, and I think it's great that she's being so inclusive and thinking about people who need that. So yeah. Okay, this is my extraordinarily long rant about why I love Scarlet's book, and if you would like me to go into a deep dive about Scarlet, or Thorn, or Cinder, or any of the other characters, please let me know, because I'd be happy to make a video about any of them. And I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please remember to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in my next one. Bye, guys!